Broadcasting live from the World Wide Web, delivering the news 24/7 and the best Filipino entertainment in an online television. Blockbuster movies, great shows, music videos, and more. Serving the Filipino community in Northern America and the rest of the world. This is MCBN.TV, connecting our world.
How does an immigrant face mental illness without the shame? And are we educated enough to rise above the illness that succumb probably a lot of like family or loved ones or even in the community? So today we are joined by Micah Panjaitan and Loisa Aquino, and who are brave enough to actually be part of the discussion and in their young lives. So hopefully you'll join us. Stay connected. Ask some questions. I think this is an opportunity to do that. So stay tuned.
ASAP Tickets, your trusted Filipino travel experts. We offer daily hot deals, 24/7 customer support, Tagalog-speaking agents. Seats are limited. ASAP Tickets, the only travel agency you need.
For the first time ever on a Toronto stage, Cheeky Crown Media, in association with Stayman Estates and MCBN Media Group, in cooperation with Black Diamond Event Management, present Diva to Diva. Diva to Diva. It's a clash of world-class Pinoy talents, the goddesses of music, back to back with the queens of the night. Diva to Diva. Cool Ledesma, Shasha Padilla, Mitch Valdez, Nanette Inventor. An evening of laughter and sighs, of ageless beauties and voices, and of fun moments and punchlines. It's a showdown of performances. Diva to Diva Toronto, September 22nd at the Toronto Pavilion. Caregivers, unite! Your show is here. ATC. Ito tayong mga caregivers. Caregivers na nasa ibang parte ng ating mundo o nasa Canada mismo. Sama ka na sa palatuntunang tutugon sa iyong mga hinaing. Sasagot sa mga isyong bumabagabag sa inyong damdamin. Pag-uusapan ang mga temang napapanahon at mga hamon sa buhay ng mga caregivers ng kasalukuyang panahon. ATC. Kasama ang inyong ating ATV Pagaduan. This program is brought to you by Action Honda, where car ownership is made easy.
Okay. It's kind of like I was thinking about this topic. It's like it's sensitive. And not a lot of people probably not understand how to navigate this, especially if you're a loved one, know or probably don't know. And we're trying, like, I think even for the audience, we're not trying to be an expert. I can't. And sharing your experiences, your wisdom and perspective, I think help people kind of like, okay, I want to be part of that. What do I need to understand? Let's start about shame about mental illness. does it exist, and how we're going to navigate that?
Go ahead.
It does exist.
Yes, shame with mental
Yes.
illness does exist, obviously, for the people experiencing it, and obviously for like their close social circles, especially if they know about it, just because, again, like you said earlier, it's like a heavy thing to carry, and especially if you don't know how to deal with it or talk about it or navigate with it, it becomes sort of this hush hush burden thing, like on your immediate family, and then especially if other people know about it, then it becomes more complicated. So yes, there's a lot of shame in that topic.
If it starts that, like, okay, I know there's something wrong, where do I go from there?
I
Like,
think
what do you tell people?
I feel like the best thing you can tell someone when they realize that they're struggling and they're able to admit it is to let them know that they're not alone in it, that there are people around them that care about them, whether it's your friends, your family, a teacher, anybody. The first step is reaching out and getting help. And that's acknowledging that it's okay that you need help, and it's okay that you're not okay, but you need to do something about it. Because to get help and to understand that you are going through something, that's very strong of you to do that, to understand that maybe you do need help and you're not someone that can go through this alone. And so the first step is to have this conversation, which is a big reason why I love advocating for mental health. It's because you don't have to have money, you don't have to cut off your leg to help someone when they're struggling with their mental health. You simply just have to have a conversation.
So, and this is, I think, part of kind of like the issue, and a lot of people probably not reaching out, like, now I come to you. So the person now receiving this news, and like, what can I do? What should my response be? Because it can probably be a shock for people, and probably you have experienced this already. Like, but it's almost like you're crippled to like a response. It's something that I don't want to hurt this person, but I don't know what to say. Is there a right thing to say when you're approached with this?
I don't think there's necessarily a right thing to say, but I think there's a wrong thing to say. I don't think that you should let them know that I don't know what to do, or like I've never happened this before. I think it's so important to let them know you're there for them, and let them know that you understand and you hear them, that they are struggling, and let them know that it can get better and that they're doing a good job simply by talking about it. That's the hardest step beyond anything else. It's acknowledging that you do need that help. So I think the wrong thing to say would be you're crazy, or I don't believe you, or that's not real, which is something that a lot of people get these days, and that's so unfortunate, because if only people knew how hard it was to actually get out and say, I'm struggling. I think the right thing to do, there's so many right answers. You could let them know that you're there for them. You could help them find a place to get professional help. You could let them know that if they're ever feeling a kind of way, that you're always going to be there for them. And that's essentially what our society is missing. It's just straight compassion and empathy to understand that people do struggle.
So it goes back to like, there's still a lot of work needs to be done in terms of education. It's a lot of like raising awareness. It doesn't only happen. It has happening right now in schools, in the workplace, probably like, why we need to talk about it. I think that's probably part of the response. And a lot of our organization is like, what do they need to do to step up? And is this really a responsibility of an organization that you yourself, like, if you need to reach out, go reach out and talk to someone? And I think a lot of it is like the ignorance or fear of the response back, or fear of people, like they're going to be distant to them. And the same thing with family members, like me as a parent, like they're young, but what should I do? What's the first thing as a parent should do when this become kind of like a reality for them?
I guess just to add on to what Loisa said, I feel like one important thing that you can like tell someone when they share this vulnerable aspect of themselves is to first like thank them, like, oh, thank you for sharing like this really sensitive and personal and heavy thing with me, because I feel like that, like, that shows that they're trusting you and that there's that trust in that relationship. But when it comes to like, here's the thing, this is my opinion and this is how I see it. It's sort of like mental health is just an aspect of our lives, and someone with a mental illness, that's an aspect of their identity. So I feel like in my opinion, when this is shared to you as a parent or as sort of like as a caretaker or a guardian, I feel like you can like go about that in the same way that you go about any other aspects of their life.
So it's not an identity. If you're diagnosed and you know, I'm not identified with that and that's not my whole life or being.
Yes. Okay. But it's also important to note that it is an important aspect of their identity and how they go about their life. Because I feel like one thing that people sort of forget about mental illness is that like it is a disability and that it does disable or prevent people from going about their lives than those that don't have it. So like, for example, when it comes to like physical disability or physical illness, that's easy to talk about and that's easy to spot because you can see it and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to like mental illness, it's like, okay, like where is it? Like,
oh, it's not true. You're not, or you're faking. Is that part of the fear of people experience, like having one? It's like they're gonna think that I'm just faking, or consider being odd. But there's so much more that needs to happen. I think I'm always going back that, like you mentioned, that Canada is so diverse. And part of it is that our cultural background could be a deterrent to reaching out or even admitting it, even in the family. Or it could be considered like, don't talk about it, so we're going to be already stigmatized. And I think also part of it, like we're always saying about stigma. Should we just get away from that and just think about like, what can we do to educate people? Or the reality is, there's a stigma attached to it.
The reality is there is a stigma, and that's simply because of the lack of conversation. And in an ideal world, I would like to see a world where we can have conversations about mental health and mental illness and not have it be taboo or not have it be something that we're shamed for. But in order to get something you've never had before, you have to do something you've never done before. And the one thing as a society we've never done before is have open conversations about mental health and mental illness to the point where it's normal and it's okay. You have people who are sick all the time, who break legs, who can get pneumonia, who can get cancer, and we talk about those things. So why talk about mental health or mental illness? And it's uncomfortable, and it's okay that it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's okay that it's touchy, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't touch it. And that's something that people often get mistaken. Just because you're uncomfortable means you shouldn't do it. There's no growth in society or within a person by staying comfortable and being complacent. So to have a more progressive society and to have a more progressive conversation surrounding mental health, we need to be uncomfortable. And I feel like if we're not making each other uncomfortable with these conversations, we're always going to be uncomfortable.
I think it requires for a person to be in that conversation, to realize like I'm brave enough to be part of that conversation and I have something to say and share and I want to be part of it. The reality is not a lot of people are like that. Not a lot of people who say like, consider even the value to themselves, like, yes, I'm courageous, I want to be part of it. But a lot of them become silent. A lot of them retrieve into their own world and their probably the whole family. So what is the responsibility? Whose responsibility anyways? Is it the community? What should the community do then? Is it the doctors? What should they just be staying in their, in their cubicle? Like, what more do we want to see?
I think it's not just one person that has a job. It's a whole puzzle. We, as a society, are made up of a society is made up of people. And if we're all not doing our own part, there's no way we can change the way society is moving. So if we're able to have doctors who understand mental health and really do value the whole concept of mental health, if we have parents who are willing to understand and hear their children, if we have students and teachers who are willing to learn about mental health, how to have these conversations, how to help somebody, what exactly is a mental illness, then we all have our own part and we're going to move into the direction we want to be moving. But without the dedication from everybody willing to have these conversations, it's going to be nearly impossible. So that's why mental health is so important within these conversations, within the school system, within our households. Because without it, we don't know where else we're going to learn it from. If our parents don't teach us, if our schools don't teach us, then we're left in a burning fire. That's it. How do you know where to get help? How do you know when you do need help? How do you know if you're struggling? How do you know anything, right? So just all of that. We all have our own part, and it has to be a part of being open-minded too. You can't just hear the word depression or suicide and walk out of a room.
Mm-hmm.
You can, but that's not going to get you where you want to go. You want to be able to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a part that we all need to play.
I think that's kind of like my question. So I know someone, if I know someone, what should I do? What would be the first step? Like you said, like you're gonna reassure them, yes, it's okay. But now we need resources. Like what program? And you mentioned that not a lot of doctors probably would say that, yes, I would help you or be open. And then you, and as a person who's reaching out, would probably go somewhere else. And like lucky enough to have a person who will be open-minded. Yes, I'm gonna help you and navigate. So we'll actually gonna go back and talk about more. And if you have any questions, I think a lot of people are actually doing that right now. We'll read them and ask Loisa and Micah to discuss more about that and share their wisdom. So stay tuned.
Transmission now.
MCBN TV. It all starts with BinoyRadio.com, trailed by Crosswave Radio. Now comes a new kind of entertainment that connects us all. From our motherland, the Philippines, to the land you chose to migrate, the world we knew then and the world we know now. Streaming live 24/7 anywhere on earth. Para sa to, kabayan, this is MCBN TV, connecting our world.
Taste Filipino food on the run. Join Tikim, the first ever Filipino food fun run in Toronto. September 22, 2018, Earl Bales Park, Toronto. Register now. Visit mytfc.com/Tikim Toronto for details.
AS Favorite Tickets, your trusted Filipino travel experts. We offer daily hot deals, 24/7 customer support, Tagalog-speaking agents. Seats are limited. AS Favorite Tickets, the only travel agency you need.
At UMS Healthcare College, earn your diploma and NACC certification for Personal Support Worker Program in 6 months. At UMS, you can get the best education for PSW program and committed quality training through our healthcare staffing agency. Register with us today and receive 15% off on your tuition. Visit our website, umsmed.ca, or call at 416-495-9000. There's only one radio station in Canada that plays pure Filipino music.
Gagawin ko ang lahat para makapiling ka. Sa lahat ng babae, sa'yo lang kakagati ko.
We are North America's #1 Filipino radio. Pinoy Radio. I love Filipino music.
I will continue that sentence.
Yeah,
Okay. No, actually, we're back. But I like what you were saying. There's a movie.
A show.
A show.
Yeah,
Yes.
a show on Netflix.
Because I mentioned earlier that there's a lot more, I think, to touch that a lot of people being impacted by someone who has a mental illness. Like, let's just go simple as like as a family. And I mentioned and I shared that I grew up with a sister with cerebral palsy, and for me, that's my normal life. But at some point, like when people talk about it or like mention about it, I get angry, like so defensive, because you don't know, and truly they don't know. And I don't expect them to be compassionate now, but when I was young, like you should understand us. So now thinking about it, in this time, there are younger people who doesn't really understand what's kind of like happening, and that's where you shared. There's a show about a family dealing with autism.
Yeah, so like autism isn't a mental illness. It's a completely different category. But I just, because with what you said about your experience with a sibling who has cerebral palsy, and sort of sometimes how it's hard to like, you know, navigate your life, having someone close in your life who has a disability or a mental illness. And so Atypical was the show I was talking about. And another show that, not a show, it's actually a movie. It's also on Netflix. It's
You
called
love Netflix.
Well, I mean, it's accessible.
I know. There you go. It's true.
Like, it's easy to access. So, another film is called To the Bone, and it explores eating disorders and a character who is facing, I believe it's anorexia. And again, just like Atypical and just like your experience, it sort of like highlights how her family navigates her eating disorders. And especially I love how it focuses on the relationship that she has with her sister or her stepsister, and sort of like how that puts a burden on her stepsister, having someone who has an eating disorder and is legit on the edge of dying because she can't eat. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are media out there that is sort of delving into these like really meaningful aspects of families and relationships and how they deal with complicated issues.
It's true. It's relatable.
Yeah.
Until we know someone, a close friend or a family, and that's where the time that it's almost like we're in a shock. Like, okay, what should I do now? Like, so before I kind of mentioned when we went to commercial, like mental illness. How do we need to understand? How do you define mental illness? What surrounds that? What is that all about?
I mean, there's a bunch of different kinds of mental illnesses. There's a whole book dedicated to defining each and every mental illness. And there's a spectrum. Someone who has depression, not everyone has the same level of depression. Not everyone has the same level of anxiety, the same type of anxiety, the same type of bipolar disorder. There's so many different things that people can have. Just like if you have cancer, there's so many different types of cancers you can have. And so it really depends. I feel like for each person, there can be something that triggers them. There can be something that they feel that causes them to have depression. And to you, it might seem like such a small thing, like losing a game. But to another person, it could impact them in a way you don't even understand. And so for me, when I see people or when I know people are struggling from their mental illnesses, I know that sometimes it's hard because you want to be able to say you understand, but unless you physically have gone through it, you can't say you understand.
But that's hard though. It's like I can't really live your life having a mental illness for me to understand.
You can have empathy for them, but it's really hard to say I 100% understand step by step what you're going through if you haven't had it. And that's where it gets really difficult because you feel alone and you want someone to understand exactly what you're going through, and you can't put words to it sometimes. So how do you explain to someone what you're feeling when you can't put words to it? And that's where you just have to care. You don't have to be a medical professional. You don't have to be anybody. You don't have to have...
You don't need to be an expert.
No, you don't. You just have to be a good person. You just have to be a kind person with a kind heart that's compassionate, that has empathy. And that's all we really ask for in this world. So when you know that someone is struggling with depression or anxiety or some other mental illness, a lot of people don't even know that eating disorders are mental illnesses too. And that's a really big issue because that impacts so many young, especially teenage girls. And so when you know that someone is struggling and they're able to tell you, I have a mental illness, just be empathetic. Understand that it's not an easy thing for them to go through or to even tell you. And so a mental illness in itself is a sensitive topic, just like any other illness. Because at the end of the day, a mental illness can kill you too. And people don't understand that. And maybe it's not the actual depression that's killing you, but it's going to be suicide. Or it's going to be another thing that leads you to understand or think and believe that you don't think your life is valuable. So the whole concept of mental illness is very, very, very touchy. And it's very unique to every single person. I don't think any person struggles in the same way as any other person because we're all our own individuals. We have our very own stories. So to say that this is the unique definition for a mental illness, I don't think it'd be fair to say that what troubles me is the same thing that troubles you. And so at the end of the day, I think we just need to be people, not kind people with hearts that understand that a mental illness is an illness too. And just because I don't have a cast on my arm, or I didn't have surgery for it, or because you can't physically see what's wrong with me, you still need to understand that that's something that is a part of me. Like Micah was saying earlier, your mental is a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you as a whole. You don't have to be that person with depression. You can still be you, and you have depression, and that's okay. But you can't let it control your life and define you.
I think with the rise of the social media also, and there's two big names that back-to-back, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain lost their lives in suicide. With this type of news, does that help, or does it also start conversation and let's start being more aware and try to reach out to people that we didn't know the signs? It's almost like you lost the time of like able to help, and then suddenly they're gone. So the social media then is a helpful tool, or itself is endangering those people who's actually experiencing type of depression that could turn to a suicide?
I think it depends on how you look at it. If you want to see it as something that they got this much attention from suicide, I want to do it too. You can look at it like that, or you can look at it the way that I did when I lost one of my best friends to suicide. You can say, he's not going to lose his life for no reason, and no one's gonna forget his name, and I'm going to make sure of it. And you can make that the conversation. You can have the conversation saying, this is why you should not end your own life. This is why your life is valuable. This is what you can do with that pain, and you can turn that pain into passion, but only if you choose to. There's two different perspectives that you can choose from. I think as a person who has struggled, and as a person who could be struggling in that moment, it's very hard to see the perspective why you should not give up. And that's why it can get very dangerous. And that's a lot of the questions that I get is, what about copycat suicides, right? And I think that's a very good point. I think that people can look at suicide and say, this is how much attention they're getting from it. They're getting this. Everyone's saying that they love them. But suicide is 100% preventable. 100%.
In what way? What's the number one that we can actually do something about it?
The one having conversation. And that's it. If you can communicate it's an important issue and that you're not alone in it, I generally don't think anybody wants to die. I think people struggle with finding value in their life. I think people struggle with finding someone who cares about them. I think people struggle with internal thoughts within their head that make them believe that they are not valuable in this world, that they have no place. But I don't think they don't want to live. I think at times maybe they don't want to, but I think at the end of the day, they have people that they love. And so there's so many different factors when it comes to copycat suicides and when it comes to suicide. But when you lose someone or you see someone that dies by suicide, I think there's actions that you can take that can make a difference in the world. And it really depends. And that's why we really rely on conversation to make people understand that it's okay if you're struggling, but it doesn't have to be the end. And the best thing that I've seen in so many years of having social media, and this is why I love social media, you can spread positivity. It's so easy to spread positivity. And the one thing I read was, if you're going through hell, why stop in hell? Why would you stop when everything is awful? Why not keep going? And that itself is so powerful. And the whole issue of social media where you see Kate Spade and Bourdain dying by suicide, it's a message. And you take whatever you want from that message. And you can understand that people cared about them and people are heartbroken from them. Or you can see this other side where people have so much attention. So that's our part as a society, to make people understand what they're worth before it's too late. And that's something that we fail to do as a society because we lack in compassion, we lack in education, we lack in awareness. So that's why mental health advocacy in general will always be so important.
And continue that conversation, continue like what you say, like I like what you said, that value to us as a person, to you as a human being, and to others also. Because whether they're experiencing it or not, like having to work that is like gonna really impact positively others as well. So I like when you put it in a perspective, like, yeah, it's helpful and not helpful. Getting attention, like, oh, I probably should do that. So I would kind of like almost like test that, oh, is that where I'm gonna get the value anyways? For now, like there's really nothing kind of like happening. But when you're down, the only way is really up. There's nowhere going down, just go up after that, right?
The best thing that I love about that is that when people say they're at rock bottom, not only is there nowhere else to go but up, But a rock is a solid place to have a foundation, to go nowhere but up, to understand that your life can be built on the very, very, very bottom that you could ever be. And the bottom will always be there. The bottom's not going anywhere. And if you think about it like that, it's not that bad being at the bottom.
From that, you kind of like learn, like, yeah, you're right. I like that. Like, that's the good foundation. You're almost like stable. And then, okay, we're going to go up here from then on.
I just wanted to add in the social media that, especially I feel like for younger folks, so like late teens.
You are?
Yes, so me. So like early teens all the way to like mid-20s, late 20s. I feel like with the use of social media, people have been able to develop and create with other people who experience mental illnesses that they also have. So, like, for example, people that I follow, let's say on Instagram, like they share themselves sort of like the hard days that they go through. And so like reading someone explaining it and articulating about their pain or their hardship, that sort of like brings comfort to you because it's like someone's putting words to whatever you're feeling. So I feel like that's also something positive. Social media can be messy, but that's something positive that's how it's a positive medium for people, is that they follow people that they consider their positive role models. And then it sort of creates like this community for them.
I always go back to like, as a parent now, like, I guess like before not having kids is kind of like, sure, I understand it, but really not having the value, not of what is that impact all about to other people. Not until I have kids and saying like, well, how am I going to be a good parent that they're not going to arrive into a situation that I'm going to lose them or they're going to lose their way. It's almost saying that you won't understand until you be one. At the same time, like you won't understand being someone suffering until you be one. So at some point, like whose responsibility is it? Like we're really how much more that we can actually push someone that I want to help, but the person doesn't want to really reach out for help. But where do I go from there? I know there's too many questions, but it's almost like it's really hard. It's difficult. You're sensitive. It's fragile. Like it's all there. So where do we go from that?
Yeah, that's a heavy question.
I know.
Loaded with so many questions.
It is like, I think that's where when I thought about kind of like the episode, like I don't want to be an expert to it. I want to open up like people like not having real answers, because the question itself would allow people to think more and be just open and like, I want to look at my environment. It's almost like start from what you're saying, start from there. Start from what you know and just have the empathy and compassion. You're going to help someone.
To kind of just answer the questions, multiple questions you just threw out there. I think the main thing between parents and kids is communication. If you're able to communicate with them and let them know that you can talk to them, that you guys can have this conversation, and that if you need help, you can get it, that's number one. I think that's the most important thing that a parent can do, is let them know that they understand the concept of mental health. Because if your kid broke their arm, you wouldn't say that sucks or I don't believe you. You're going to go take them to the doctor. But if your kid says she has or he has anxiety, you're not going to take them for what reason, right? Because it's a mental illness, because it's different and you can't see it. So I think the whole concept for a parent and a child is to understand that there's so many different factors from when I was a kid and from when my parents were kids, right? It's nowhere near the same society, nowhere near the same culture that we have, especially if you grew up in two different countries. Not only is there an age gap between you and your parents, but a cultural gap. And there's so many things that we have now that they didn't have. And to go back to the thing that Mike was saying about social media that I loved, is that you can connect with people that struggle maybe in the same way as you or with the same thing. And the thing I love about that is that you're able to see other people's lives, and not a lot of people are willing to put the negative parts of their life on social media. And that's the whole reason why I think a lot of kids and a lot of teens are having a lot of trouble finding happiness because they see what other people have, because they only post the best parts of their lives.
So it's like their lives being measured to someone else's
Exactly.
life.
And it's
not.
and it's the absolute peak of their lives that they're measuring to. You can't measure the lowest part of your life to the peak of someone else's. Not only are you two different people, but those are two very different heights. And that's where a lot of the struggle comes from, because we look at other people and what they have and what they're sharing, and people don't share the negative aspects of their life. You don't see them when they're down, when they're struggling, when they're depressed, when they have anxiety. You don't see those things. You don't see when they cry themselves to sleep at night. You don't post about that, right? And that's why a lot of the issues, I think, for me and my friends, is that we always compare ourselves. And because it's so easy to Google someone, you Google beautiful and you see the exact same picture, exact same body types, exact same white skin, blonde hair, everything. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we struggle so much. And that's something our parents would not understand, because they didn't have computers, they didn't have Google, they didn't have Instagram, they didn't have Facebook, they didn't have Twitter.
They don't know, probably some of them don't know how to use a cell phone.
Exactly. And that's the whole issue, is that when you and your child didn't grow up in the same generation, the same culture, it's a very hard concept to understand. So you need to be willing to listen, and you need to be willing to talk, because communication is between two people, and it also consists of listening and speaking, right? So if a parent is willing to listen to why their child may be feeling a certain type of way, they can't say, no, that's not real. Because feelings are real, and you can't tell someone they don't have feelings. That's not your place, right? And so as a parent, you need to be willing to listen, and as a child, you need to trust your parents too, and let them know that they do care about you, and they have you in their best interest, and just because they do not understand right now does not mean they will never understand.
It's almost like simplify the message.
Exactly.
That always tell them that I'm here, I'm just listening. And that's what we're going to do today, to explore more about what else can we do, and to really navigate the impact what the loved ones or even friends, like just what Loisa have kind of experienced, and know what those feelings are, so we can help you further understand what you're going through as well. So we'll be back.
Homecomings. Fresh starts. Goodbyes. Over the last 75 years, the unique warmth of our people has touched millions of lives.
The heart of the Filipinos shining through. Filipino light shining through.
For the first time ever on a Toronto stage, Cheeky Crown Media, in association with Stayman Estates and MCBN Media Group, in cooperation with Black Diamond Event Management, present Diva to Diva. Diva to Diva. It's a clash of world-class Pinoy talents, the goddesses of music, back to back with the queens of the night. Diva to Diva. Cool Ledesma, Shasha Padilla, Mitch Valdez, Nanette Inventor. An evening of laughter and sighs, of ageless beauties and voices, and of fun moments and punchlines. It's a showdown of performances. Diva to Diva Toronto, September 22nd at the Toronto Pavilion.
Taste Filipino food on the run. Join Tikim, the first ever Filipino food fun run in Toronto. September 22, 2018. Earl Bales Park, Toronto. Register now. Visit mytfc.com/Tikim Toronto for details.
We should go, baka matraffic tayo.
Yes, come. Alex, the flowers, please. Alex. Alex.
Lola! STV time na with you and Lolo.
Me too, Apo.
Stand the test of time from a sight, a sound, or scene. There's a love that's felt right in your heart where the magic all begins. Anywhere you go and the music plays, you smile and it's okay. From the radio, our song is played, a love that's shared today.
This program is brought to you by iRemit. Sa iRemit, may ngiti sa bawat padala.
The last part. Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry. We were just we're talking about people wanted to ask for no, not ask for help. People who are experiencing it, deciding to say that this is my issue, this is my story. Is it okay for them to say that I don't want to share it? I just want to deal with it. And here you are, like we keep on saying that if you're aware, say to them that yes, I'm here to listen. Yes, I value. I want to help you. So it's almost kind of like stop where you are, just let me be. And those people willing to help, what do they do now? Like, where's the responsibility lies to that?
Okay, well, first of all, to the person who says that they kind of want space and time to deal with it themselves, that's valid and that's your choice. So good on you.
But hold it.
Yeah.
In a way, is that a sign to say that there's probably something going on more difficult and challenging? So it's time for us to like really come together and go to that person that,
I mean,
you know?
if it's an extended period of time and you're locking yourself in a room for like 3 months on end, then yes. But I think everybody needs time away from the world for a few days. And like Micah just said, that's okay.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
And it's also like, I just like wanted to make a distinction whether like that person is withdrawing themselves without anyone knowing about their mental illness or like they're withdrawing themselves.
If they're articulating, saying like, stop, I just want to be on my own.
Right.
I don't need your help.
Right.
When do you push? When do you step in? When do you until it's late?
Oh.
I think that's kind of like also for family members and friends. Like, is there guilt kind of like you're going to experience? I think there is. Like guilt of like, have I like reached out enough? Have I said enough? Have I cared enough? I've done enough? That's the guilt. It's almost saying like when they did that, it's almost selfish that I'm here to help.
I don't think, like Michael was saying, I don't think it's selfish. I think that you have every right to take time for yourself. And I think the most important part about when you're struggling is you need to understand that there are people that care about you. You need to communicate with them, the people that care about you. And if you really just need that time alone, that's okay. because the world is hectic, and to be surrounded by people every single day gets very, very exhausting. And I think it does get difficult when you have someone that is there for you, that wants to do that for you. And I can see why it would be seen as a selfish act. But at the same time, you can't force someone to get help. You can't force someone to get better and want to be better if they don't want to get better. So all you can do is wait for them to understand that I'm here for you. And when you're ready to get help, I will be here. And you just need to keep letting them know. You don't have to push them. You don't have to make them feel bad for not wanting to talk to anybody. You just need to be there. And that's all you can ask for. A lot of people think that when someone comes to you to ask for help, that they want you to talk. Sometimes I just want you to listen. And even though you're just listening, that means a lot more to me than something that you might say that might make me even more mad or make me not want to talk to you even more. So sometimes just having them there, having them be accessible, just accessibility is enough. And that's really it. And it's not selfish, I don't think. I don't think that's selfish at all, because if you don't think anyone else in your life understands you, then why are you going to waste your time and waste your energy explaining to someone that you know would not be able to understand? But if you know that they're there just to listen and for the sole purpose of being there for you and having someone that does care about you and love you, then I think it's okay if you want to be alone. But I don't think it's okay to isolate yourself. I don't think it's okay to push people away. I don't think it's okay to not get help when you know that you do need help. I think you really need to listen to people around you and understand. And you need to not just listen, but hear them, take them in, and understand that these are people that care about you. And this is what they would like you to do, but you don't have to do it. But at the end of the day, they are saying it to you because they love you and they care about you.
It's almost like I'm not here to treat you or take it away. I'm here to alleviate any burden and pressure, to kind of like help carry the load. It's more like there's an impact to that, to say that, yeah, it's simply, you're not alone. Let me help carry some of it.
And even just knowing that you're not alone, even if you can carry it yourself, but knowing that even if you can't one day, that there's someone there for you, that counts for more than people know.
You were going to add something.
I forgot now. Yeah, I forgot. Sorry.
What's in my head? Where is guilt? Would guilt exist when you lost someone? Is it okay to feel guilty of what should I at least could have done, or that's okay, and feeling guilty and talk about it, like just to really understand what that's all about?
I mean, I think guilt's normal. When I lost someone in my life to suicide, I thought there was more that I could do. But at the end of the day, I did what I did in that time. And it makes me question how I treat people in my life. And it made me question, how do I show love to the people that I love? It made me question, how do I show love to random strangers, right? Because you don't know who's going through it. But guilt is normal, to think that you could have said more to them, been there with them, been talking to them more, like actually have conversations with them to understand where they really are in their life. And guilt is normal. But at the end of the day, feeling guilty isn't going to change the fact that you already lost them. The most you can do is move on and realize and understand that you can change how you can feel whenever you lose someone in your life. Because for me, I realized that I wasn't doing my best with my friend. I wasn't at my best. I wasn't constantly communicating with him. We weren't at a good spot. And that made me realize that I need to be saying I love you to everybody that I love. And not only saying it, but showing it, right? And having people in my life that I can have these conversations with. And I felt so guilty. I was only 15 and I felt guilty, right? And I know that everyone else that was friends with him felt guilty, because we know that we should have been there. But at the end of the day, it's done. And all you can do is make sure that people don't forget his story, people don't forget his name, people don't forget his smile. And how do you do that? By showing love to other people, by being compassionate, by having empathy. And at the end of the day, that's all I know that he would ever ask for from me and the people that he loves.
Live to the story and legacy that would help other people not feel guilty, or yes, feel guilty, and what you're going to do after the past that already have happened. So what you're going to do more, and you've done a lot, like Peace of Mind, I think, came out from there as well with that initiative. And is that the number one motivation for you when you created that?
100%. Peace of Mind, only for me, I was only so passionate about it because I knew that for someone that I've grown up with for basically my whole life, there's no way that I'm gonna let him be forgotten. Absolutely no way. And for something that within Winnipeg, for such a small city, there was 4 suicides that had happened in the time span of 3 weeks, less than a month, and we lost 4 high school students to suicide. There's no way that was gonna happen for no reason. There's no way that they're gonna be forgotten. And I wasn't going to wait around for somebody to do something. And yeah, like memorial plaques are nice, but what's even better is making sure that we can all talk about it and making sure that no one else has to go through the things that we went through. And what better way to do that than to talk about it?
It's almost like it doesn't stop there. It's just that so doesn't necessarily mean someone's life ended. It ends.
Like life, their name doesn't have to die when their life ends. And that's what I learned. And I think that's something that really pushes me is that love can be never ending if you choose to let it be never ending. And I think that's the most beautiful part about all of this is that you see something that's wrong and you see something that hurts you. But something that's powerful enough to hurt you is also powerful enough to change the world. And that's something that as a society, we don't see very often. So to be able to understand that there is power in pain and there is power to create beauty is something that really helps me and pushes me when I know that I have to balance everything on top of that and I'm still passionate about this one thing. There's so many things in this world that could distract me, that I could be doing as a normal teenager. But I think the whole concept of having someone's name live on after them is so beautiful.
It's so amazing with the two of you. You're so young and you have so much passion to something so sensitive and a lot of people aware about it for now. And it's so what our generation of old people should learn about you then? I think you have so much more to say about that. Well, to point it out, yes, you're right. Like a lot of information is accessible today. Let's not be hard to the old people like me. It's true. Not a lot of them are accessible at that time. We're just learning, and it's more like you guys are way more advanced than us and opening up it's almost like as simple as opening up the conversation, and that's where we're going to learn. So what's the big advice for us?
I just don't want to leave this conversation without saying, because I'm a political science student, so a lot of where I come from in terms of my beliefs and stuff comes from politics. And in regards to what you're saying, for me, the personal is political. So when it comes to mental illness, that's also very much political. For example, just you bring up the example of how 4 students in your high school in Winnipeg committed suicide. Was that all in 1 year?
Within a month.
Oh, within a month. So hearing Loisa bring that up reminds me of other cases in Canada as well within Indigenous communities where there is a super high rate of suicide.
Not that we know, and it's not reported.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So on top of that, it goes back to also how organizations, mental health organizations, go about providing services. Because I know that for a lot of mental health organizations or nonprofit organizations, they're also facing a lot of strain in terms of funding. Because again, goes back to politics and sort of who gets how much funds, what funds are these used for. So I forgot my main point now, but
being a political
political science student, mental illness is very much so as I said, personal is political. How mental illness is dealt with in society, how it's portrayed, how it's stigmatized, it has a lot to do also with how in terms of politically how it's dealt with. For example, there's been news over the recent years of Toronto police not knowing how to deal with passengers, let's say on the TTC, who have either, I don't know what they had, but for example, when it comes to bipolar disorders, people have manic episodes. So how does public service person, such as Toronto police, know how to navigate with someone experiencing mental illness? Because again, we've covered, it's not talked about.
Or not prioritized
Not
enough
prioritized,
to
yeah.
put funding, as like you said,
Yeah.
politically.
Yeah.
We're not doing
Yeah.
that. And as a society, we're not providing enough resources or probably programs, or not even wanted to go there. It's going to come. Do you believe that? We're going to get there.
If we all do our part, I believe so. And to just answer your question to the advice aspect, I think the number one advice you can give, for surrounding my work, the one thing I really want to tackle is people of different ethnicities, people from different countries, immigrants, refugees, people who are people of color. I know that Canadians as well, people who are born here, Caucasians, I know that literally anybody, and I've met a lot of people that don't understand the concept of mental health, but specifically people of color who do not understand and think mental health and mental illness is a foreign concept to them. I think especially to them, don't wait for a wake-up call. Don't wait until you have somebody that is self-harming, until you have somebody who is struggling with mental health or mental illness, and it's going to shock you and you don't know how to deal with it. You don't know how to understand or cope with what is going on. And I think that's something that we all should do, have a conversation, get educated. And it's so accessible to have this information. Google, we're always on our phones. Google something, learn something every day, whether it's about mental health in general or mental illness in specific. It's so easy to learn. But the one thing that we're lacking, like I said, this whole interview, is compassion. We lack so much compassion. It makes me angry. It makes me frustrated to understand that there are human beings that don't have compassion. And that's what we really need to do. And you can't teach compassion. And that's why it gets difficult. But my best advice is to have these conversations and to understand that not asking for help is something that really, really, I guess, is a very key factor in when people think that their lives are not valuable, because they don't know where to ask for help, how to ask for help, or if people even understand. And something that I love saying is that some people think that getting help is the weakest thing you can do. But when you're struggling with mental health or mental illness, getting help is the strongest thing you can do for yourself. That is the most hardest thing you could ever do, is admitting that you need help. And at the end of the day, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not do anything about it. And I think as a society, the one thing that I want to say to everybody would be that there's so much more to this world, and there's so much more to life. And I hope that people realize that. And I hope that people understand that they are valuable, that they're in this world for a reason. And they are in this world to spread love, to share love, to receive love. And I think there's just so much more to life than when you were struggling. If you think of all the good times and all the smiles that you had, all the issues that I had back then when I was in grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, when people were dealing with popularity and social media, I can't remember any of those feelings anymore. But it's because I consciously made the decision to do better in my life and to get better. And I know that's hard. And I know a lot of people, it takes willpower to get better, and it does, and it's difficult, but it's not impossible. And something my parents always told me is that good things never come easy. They absolutely will never come easy. And so that means if you're willing to get help, and even though that's hard, it's going to pay off so much more in the long run. So I think that's the one thing, is just stick through it and understand that it can get better and it will get better, but you need to take the first step in doing so.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of wisdom really shared, and I really hope a lot of people heard that, and it will be heard. And I think really don't give up. It's not the end, even someone else's life has ended. It's like you said, it's not easy, but it's political, it's personal, it's societal. It just gives us an opening that do something about today, and not let compassion be on a wayside, like not compassion or love, not just be heard. So don't give up, and you're not alone. Thank you so much for joining us.
MCBN, connecting our world.